Okay, we are going to go over part 3. So in lab, you can discuss your different hypotheses. I'm going to go over how to actually run the analyses that you'll end up interpreting. So our first step is to check the reliability of our measure and compute the new variable. This is a review from what you did last week with Stacy. Analyze, scale reliability analysis, and we need items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12, and then item scale, scale of deleted correlations, continue, paste, and if we run this syntax, it will check our reliability. And this value is adequate. We don't see any negatives in the inner item correlation or the item total, so this looks pretty good. We're going to compute a new variable, and let's call it communication sacred. You can look up the various expressions and the format that they need to be in. So we go here. This is the one we want. So it tells us the format. And so we basically want to just put our items here. CS2, CS5, CS6, CS7, CS8, CS12, and then hit paste. And if you already had your syntax here before, the other thing you could do is just write it out. So you just would name the variable here, and then we would enter in the items here, and everything else is the same. So I'll run it both ways, and you'll see we end up making the same variable twice. They're just called different names. So if we run this, then it's created a new variable for us. So we come back over to SPSS, and it puts new variables at the end of the data set. So what you'll see is there's one variable that I had already created, and then we just named a new variable, communication sacred, and then this is the other one that's exactly the same. So these three ought to be exactly the same. One way we can check that is just to look at the correlations between those three. And you'll see 1, 1, 1, that means they're the same variable. So in your lab, I encourage you to use this name. So I'll delete these two just to avoid confusion. And the final step in terms of new analyses is we're going to run the correlations between this construct and attachment to God and religious commitment. So analyze, correlate, bivariate. So here's our variable. We pull that over, and we're looking for religious commitment. So here we are. And then attachment to God. And we'll hit paste so we have our syntax. And let's run this. And here's our correlation matrix. Correlation, significance test, and the n being used, and you'll see the numbers are different because it's doing pairwise deletion. So if one of these variables is missing, sacred communication or religious commitment, then it drops it. So there were 290 with sacred communication, 283 that had both of those, 261 that had attachment to God and sacred communication, 261 that had anxious attachment to God and sacred communication, 259 that had religious commitment and anxious, and so forth. So the last thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to create a correlation matrix in Excel, and then I'll let you use your APA manual to construct a table according to APA style. So we'll open up an Excel document. Here is our correlation matrix, and we can just copy and paste this into Excel. Oopsie. Sometimes my Excel gives me problems. Come up top and spread those out. Click here, and we'll get these formatted. So if you click on the row, hold Control, and carefully select the significance and n, which we don't need, and then right click, delete, we'll label these across the top with numbers, and then we'll go with corresponding numbers here. And use more consistent formatting. Now we can shrink these. And the other thing, it's nice to go ahead and put the means and standard deviations in. Oops. So we can actually copy and paste this. And we can right click, format, custom. We'll make these only 2 decimals. That's pretty good. It's carrying these out to 3. It's often easier just to do these by hand to 2 decimals. Um, and you can see it's kind of giving me trouble in Excel. It thinks I'm wanting to put in a formula, so this is close enough in Excel, and then you can copy and paste that into Word, and from this point you can edit these. And it turns out you actually can delete the off diagonals because it's redundant. So we'll finish these out. And we're getting pretty close. I'll let you take it home with APA style. So the final part here, I'm going to let you do on your own. So this was from last week's lab, so I want to see if you can calculate the alphas for each. So for our scale across the different studies, we just did this one, and then also check the alphas for the measures that we ended up using.